Hello and welcome back to my channel, and welcome to day 2 of my trip to North Korea that I did back in 2008. You can watch videos from other days on my tour in the North Korea playlist. I thought it was about time I put them up on here, and what you'll see was not recorded by myself, but by a cameraman we had, who I nicknamed Mr Spielberg, who went with us everywhere we went on the tour. As well as his video, I'll also show you some photos I took whilst explaining the sites we visited during the day. So day 2 started with an alarm call that woke me up, and I opened the curtains to admire the views of North Korea's capital, Pyongyang, from my 39th floor window of the Yanggakdo International Hotel. The weather was still overcast but a little brighter than what it had been when we arrived the day before. I zoomed in on an area of a few apartment blocks where I could just make out several people walking around. I could only see a couple of vehicles, which was just incredible given that this was an Asian capital city, where normally an Asian capital city would be packed with traffic and crowds of people going about their daily business. After taking some pictures from my room, I walked out and along the passageway to the end of the corridor, which overlooked the front of the hotel and down on the rest of the small island that the hotel was located on. Right in front of the hotel was a small 9-hole pitch and putt golf course that has, since my visit, been turned into a Chinese-funded health complex. Other buildings on the island that the hotel was located on include the multi-purpose Yanggakdo Stadium that, according to a local guidebook I bought later on in the tour, was built in 1989 and which has a capacity of 30,000. Breakfast was in the hotel's #1 restaurant. A few others on my tour were already sitting at a few tables tucking into their breakfast, which consisted of toast, eggs, coffee and yogurt. Then at 9 o'clock it was time to board our tour bus and visit some sites in Pyongyang with our tour guides Kim and Shay. We went past the city's main train station and then through Kim Il-sung Square, where lots of people were sitting on the ground in neat rows rehearsing for the mass games that usually take place in August or September. Up to 100,000 performers from as young as 5 years old are selected to take part based on skill level. They are students from 8 schools in Pyongyang, each of which has its own coloured card that they hold in the air to form huge mosaic pictures. Okay, so here's the start of Mr Spielberg's video for day 2 of our tour, and we were first taken to this fountain park where we exited the bus and were allowed to walk around a little. My local guidebook said that the fountain park was built in October 1976 and features an 80-metre high fountain and 28 statues of dancers performing a dance known as snowfalls. After getting back on the bus, we were taken a very short distance to the large statue of Kim Il-sung, which stands in front of a large building on top of a hill called Mansu Hill. Our visit here was a mandatory requirement that we had to do. The statue itself is made from bronze and was originally covered in gold leaf, but apparently, at the objection of the Chinese, was later removed. Measuring in at 20 metres high, it was erected in April 1972 on the occasion of the 60th birthday of Kim Il-sung, and was originally going to be 60 metres high, but was reduced in size due, it said, to his modesty. Since my visit, another statue, that of Kim Jong-il, was erected next to Kim Il-sung following his death. The mosaic behind the statue is that of Mount Paekdu, a sacred and North Korea's highest mountain that's located near the border with China and where the Korean people believe they originate from. The large memorial standing either side of the statue symbolise the history of the Korean people's revolutionary struggle. One side is devoted to the anti-Japanese struggle, while the other to the anti-American struggle. We boarded back on the bus and headed along near empty streets, past more bland-looking apartment blocks. We were allowed to open the sliding windows of the bus in order to take photos, which surprised me, but for which I was really grateful, and so I snapped away taking pictures of propaganda art, as well as general street scenes. There wasn't any evidence of any building signage, advertising, or even street signs anywhere. What cars there were driving around were mostly either old Mercedes or Volvos, the latter of which I later read was scammed out of Sweden in 1974 in a deal that Pyongyang has never paid for. To this day, the Swedish government continues to send twice yearly invoices to Pyongyang for $330 million for the 1,000 cars and other mechanical equipment it sent. We reached our next destination, the wonderfully titled Victorious Fatherland Liberation War Museum, where there was a long line of children standing outside in single file, wearing white caps and holding sticks. Maybe they were doing some rehearsals for the mass games, as the area outside the museum was very wide and open, and so was an ideal place for them to practice their routines. We parked up right outside the entrance to the museum and were met by a woman in army uniform carrying a long stick. She took us through a series of rooms that outlined the North Koreans' view of the Korean War and how they believed it started, basically by the US imperialist aggressors, as they call the Americans here. Through translations by Shay, she showed us various propaganda documents and photographs to back up this view, but we all knew otherwise, of course, but kept quiet and simply raised our eyebrows in disbelief whenever we heard something we didn't agree with. I'll now let the narrator on the video take you through the museum.
This is Victorious Fatherland Liberation War Museum. It exhibits materials showing the immortal military exploits performed by President Kim Il-sung to lead the Korean War to a brilliant victory, and the collective heroism displayed by the Korean People's Army and people. Primarily, it was opened at the Central District, Pyongyang, in August 1953 as Fatherland Liberation War Museum, and moved to this new building in April 1974 as Victorious Fatherland Liberation War Museum. It has over 30 halls and over 80 rooms.
The best part of the museum lay in its basement, as it was full of captured American hardware, such as tanks in the form of an M26 Pershing, M4 Sherman, and M24 Chaffee, all of which didn't appear to have a scratch on them. However, there were some US trucks and jeeps that did feature smashed windows or headlights as a result of fighting. Also on display was the wreckage of a few shot-down American warplanes, some other military vehicles, as well as captured shells and guns. The museum was actually built around the underground exhibits, which explained why plane wings were right up against or even past structural pillars. It was all pretty amazing to see, regardless of all the propaganda that was relayed to us. Next up was the nearby monument to the victorious Fatherland Liberation War. There's only a few seconds of footage of us here, so I'll show you some of my photos. The monument was constructed in 1993 to mark the end of active hostilities of the Korean War. It is a white stone park of bronze sculptures that depict various battles during the war and is dedicated to, as my local guidebook stated, the Korean People's Army and Korean people who defeated the US imperialists and its allies during the Fatherland Liberation War. The highlight of the monument is a bronze soldier shouting "Hurry!" and is based on Berlin's Victory Tower, which was erected following the Prussian defeat of the French in 19th century Europe. It was then a long trip on the bus into the northern suburbs of the city to what would become, for me at least, the worst place we visited in Pyongyang, the Three Revolution exhibition. On the way there, we passed by some roadworks that were being undertaken, with trucks and a road roller rolling over freshly laid tarmac. Usually you wouldn't blink an eye at this sort of thing elsewhere in the world, but here in North Korea it was quite a surprise to see. We reached our destination, which was basically 6 halls that outlined the endeavour to implement the line of the 3 revolutions: ideological, technical and cultural. Mr Spielberg didn't show any footage of us in here, so I'll put some of my photos up instead. We were greeted by a woman guide who posed for me in traditional Korean dress before taking us up into the globe. However, there was some sort of problem with the electrics and nothing worked, which was a bit embarrassing as we were meant to be in an electronics hall. Anyway, she managed to sort out whatever the issue was, and we got to see a short film about star constellations and planets, as well as one on North Korea's one and only satellite launch, at least it was when I was there, that occurred in 1998. And that was pretty much it. It was all a bit of a waste of time, but I just guess they wanted to try and show off to us what they had achieved when technology was involved. Okay, so for lunch on day 2, we stopped off at a Korean hot pot restaurant where you cooked your own food, with each plating having been laid out with dishes of meat, salad, bean sprouts, etc., which we then cooked in our own cooking pots, which was all good fun. And then after lunch we hopped back on the bus again and made our way to one of the city's most prominent sites, which I'll let the lady narrator tell you more about.
This is the Tower of the Chucha Idea. It is a monumental edifice which was erected to eulogize the exploits of President Kim Il-sung, the founder of the Chucha Idea. The 170-meter-high tower was designed in our people's unique traditional fashion of stone tower construction. The body of the granite tower is 150 meters high and is capped by a 20-meter-high torch. It comprises a tower, trio group of worker, peasant, and working intellectual, 6 other sculptural groups, 2 pavilions, and 2 large fountains in the midstream of the Taedong River. The back of the tower body is adorned with choice stones sent by political parties and public organizations of various countries of the world. It was set up in April 1982 on the occasion of the 70th birthday of the respected President Kim Il-sung.
So for €5, I actually paid in some of my leftover Chinese money, we were allowed to go up an escalator to the top of the tower and admire the views over the city. Mr Spielberg didn't come up with us. Maybe he's scared of heights, I don't know. So I'll show you some of my photos from the top instead. I could see again people in neat rows rehearsing for the mass games in Kim Il-sung Square, which lay directly opposite the tower on the other side of the river. I could also see the huge May Day stadium that hosts the mass games further downstream in one direction, as well as our hotel on its own island in the other direction. From the top, Pyongyang certainly looked impressive, with its wide and rather underused boulevards, modern socialist-style buildings, and many trees and gardens. However, there was a rather large blot on the landscape that you just couldn't miss, and which was seen a few times whilst on the bus going around the city. It came in the pyramid-shaped form of the uncompleted Luyong Hotel. It has quite a checkered history as far as its construction goes, which has been on and off since building works began back in 1987. As a contrast, I could also see some of the oldest structures the city had to offer, such as the 6th century Putong Gate, which stood in the middle of a roundabout. There are only a handful of old pre-Korean War structures dotted around the city, as it was all but destroyed by the Americans during the war. We boarded back on the bus in order to head off to yet another monument, called the Monument to the Foundation of the Workers' Party. This one was located directly in the line of sight of the large bronze statue of Kim Il-sung we'd visited earlier that morning. It was erected for the Golden Jubilee of the founding of the Workers' Party of Korea in October 1996, is 50 meters high and features 3 components: a hammer, sickle and writing brush. These represent the worker, the peasant and the intellectual.
This is Revolutionary Martyrs Cemetery on Mount Taesong. On Chuseok Peak of Mount Taesong in Pyongyang, there are laid in state revolutionary martyrs who fought heroically for the liberation and independence of the country. The cemetery consists of a gate, commemorative tower gates, sculptural groups ground, education ground, and the district of busts. On the education ground, there stands a monumental stone inscribed with President Kim Il-sung's autographic teaching. There are also a monument stone inscribed with a paean, a bronze sculptural group of mourners, and a pedestal for placing floral tributes inscribed with the medal of Hero of the Republic. On the district busts, there stand busts of revolutionary martyrs with a red flag for background. At the cemetery, there stands a bust of anti-Japanese heroine Kim Jong-il in front of a red marble flag. The cemetery was opened in 1975 and rebuilt in 1985. It covers a total area of 300,000 square meters.
And that was day 2 of my trip to North Korea. Hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, then please give me a like, why not comment down below, and also subscribe to my channel so as not to miss any more videos from North Korea. For now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.